Hello, and welcome to Win Over Depression. I am your host, Tamara Trotter. This podcast is dedicated to the millions of people who suffer every day from a debilitating condition known as mental illness. Did you know that over 800,000 people commit suicide every single year? That equates to every 50 seconds. Someone in the world is ending their life. This podcast is dedicated to those of us who either suffer with a mental illness and want to learn techniques on how to reduce our symptoms, or to family members who are dealing with their loved ones and trying to understand them better. Remember, mental illness does not define you. Today, we'll be talking about influence. So let us first define what exactly is influence. Influence is a capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. It can be exerted in various ways, such as through personal interactions, persuasive communication, or the power of example. Influence can be positive or negative, depending on the intentions and the impact of the influencing party. When we are growing up, our parents have a great deal of influence over us because we're just learning. Then we get to our terrible twos and we start to say no. And we begin to rebel against what we're being asked to do. But at that young age, we don't have any real ability to make change or to make a decision. We just learned the word no, and we want to use it as much as possible. But our parents do influence us to make certain decisions and to do what they believe is in our best interest. So they may want us to eat our vegetables, but we don't want to. So what happens? Our parents tell us, eat your vegetables so you can have some ice cream afterward. They are influencing us to decide to eat our vegetables. They are not going to shove the vegetables in our mouth. So they are using another tactic that is going to result in the same outcome. When we get to school, kids influence our behavior. We know that some kids have a positive influence on us and other kids not so much. But oftentimes we are looking for approval and we want to be a part of something. So we allow people to influence us even when they are encouraging us to do something that we really don't want to do. So perhaps making fun of someone. And because you don't want to be the one made fun of, you decide to join in. So you have allowed the negative influence of your classmate to affect your decision. And that kind of reminds me of my childhood and growing up. I was actually the protector against bullies, and I refused to let innocent classmates of mine be bullied. And they would say, you better leave her alone because Tammy is going to get you. That's the name I went by when I was in elementary school. Because for me personally, and I can just remember from a young age, I just never liked for people to be mistreated. And that's just true for me today, young and old. I just never wanted to be in a situation where I allowed somebody to be treated badly in my presence. I just wouldn't allow it. So then when we get a little older, we experience peer pressure. And so a lot of people and a lot of psychologists have said that by the age of 7, our personality is fully developed. So if we haven't learned compassion, if we haven't learned to play nicely and to consider the opinions of others, if we haven't learned to be thankful and grateful for what we have, it's difficult for us to pick that up along the way. Can we pick it up? Absolutely. But I have experienced relatives from a young age that I noticed lacked compassion and just did not seem thankful for what had been given to them, and that followed them into adulthood. So then we began to enter the workforce, and we have coworkers and supervisors around us. And sometimes we know that some practices and some ways of doing things are not effective. But we choose to either say something or not say something based on how we believe we will be affected in the end. So sometimes in the workplace, we are influenced by other people because we are afraid to speak up. And so I just want you to think about who in your life has influence over you. And do you believe that their influence is positive and that they're giving you information or making suggestions that are good? Because we all need to have our own minds made up, and we need to be the power behind our decision making. And I can only relay to you the fact that it would be very depressing if you felt that you had no say-so in your life and that you had to simply follow what other people were telling you. And if you are in that situation, that can definitely be the reason that you are depressed, that you feel that you have no power in your life to do anything. I want to speak for just a moment about how we make change in our lives. And so I've talked many times in my previous episodes about how change is inevitable and it is the most constant situation that we can expect in our lives. And we have to learn to adapt to change, because if we fall apart every time change happens, it could be a devastating situation. So we either make change due to inspiration or desperation. So we're talking about influence. And so I'm asking you specifically, if there is someone who has a great deal of influence over your life, in order for you to change that, are you inspired to change or are you desperate to change? And as far as I'm concerned, both of them carry the same weight. Because if you are inspired to change, then that means that you have recognized that something different needs to happen in your life. And if you are desperate to change, it's the same thing. You have recognized that something needs to change. So ask yourself, are you inspired to change or desperate to change? And how does that have a specific effect on how you are influenced by other people? Oftentimes, our friends have a great deal of influence over us. We call them, we interact, we have conversation, we talk to them about our aspirations, and they make suggestions, they weigh in on our decisions, and they definitely can influence our decisions. So it's okay if someone is helping you to make a decision. but you must be comfortable with that decision. You don't want it to be a situation where you ask someone about what you should do and you just follow what they tell you, even if it's really not what you want to do. Because once you have made the decision, you are the one that has to live with the fallout or the results of that decision. And this is why it's so important that we are able to make decisions in our lives that we can stand behind 100%. Because we are the ones who are going to have to live with the impact of our decision. So when we are influenced to make a certain decision, we have to weigh the cost. What is the cost behind the decision? And I'll give you an example. And I will use money, although I personally believe that lending and borrowing just leads to issues in families and with people. But I will use it because it is easier to do. So if you have someone who is asking to borrow money and you know whether or not this person is likely to pay you back, but they are influencing you and persuading you to loan them the money because they are in need and they have told you that they will pay you back. In my opinion, if you lend money, you have to accept the fact that you may not get the money back. So I submit to you that if someone is influencing you to give them money, then I would decide that if I don't get the money back, I can live with that. Because that is going to cause a lot of turmoil in your relationship with that person. And that's why I suggest that people not lend or borrow money. But I know sometimes it is necessary. And in those situations, I will be very careful about who it is that I'm dealing with. So influence is something very powerful because there are times when people influence you to do something and they already know that it's not a good idea. So we have to, number one, consider the cost of our decision as well as decide the impact before we make the decision. Because again, you are the person that has to live with it. We have people in our lives that are important to us. And sometimes we feel as though their intentions are good because they are our boyfriend or our girlfriend, and we believe that they do have our best interest at heart and they would not make a suggestion to us that would be harmful. However, and again, we don't really know what people are exactly capable of. Now, when we grow up with siblings, we have the ability to know what they are capable of because we grew up with them and we've interacted with them day after day. But a boyfriend, a girlfriend, we don't really know a whole lot about them. And that's why I would be very careful about how you allow people that you don't know a lot about to influence you. Because people know what you are likely to do and decisions you are likely to make when they have interacted with you for a long period of time. And unfortunately, some people are out to no good and they are grooming you to be able to influence you to do something that they want you to do. And that was their motive from the very beginning. So just be careful. I'm not saying that every single person that comes into your life has a hidden agenda. I'm just saying be aware And if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Then we decide to get married. And we have a husband or wife, and then we have kids. And so again, we believe that we know everything about our husband or our wife when we get married. But sometimes there's information about them that we didn't know. And so we may be in a situation in that way where we have to make a decision and they're asking us to do something and they're influencing our decision because they want something from us. And so still, you have to consider the cost and you have to consider the impact. Because think about it. Do you believe that a boyfriend or a girlfriend would share with you the things that bother them the most or what they do when they get angry when you're dating them? Probably not. They're going to be on their best behavior. So I'm not trying to sour any relationships. I just want you to go in with your eyes open wide, because sometimes we allow our heart to guide our decisions, and therefore we are influenced into doing something that our mind told us not to do, but our heart overruled our mind, and we made a decision based on a feeling rather than a rational thought process. And unfortunately, that happens a great deal. And then we have kids, and we have influence over our kids. But guess what? So does the world. And that's why it's so very important that the influence that we have over our kids is something that will stand up strong when they're up against doing something that is right or wrong. We have to raise our kids from the moment they enter this world. And because I am a social worker by trade, I have experienced 30 years of dealing with families and knowing that oftentimes parents want to put their children in placements because their children are allowing other kids and other friends in their life to influence their behavior. And so that makes it very difficult for parents who have teenagers who are negatively influenced by other people. They're negatively influenced by something that they believe is good for them, such as drugs. It makes them feel good. It takes their mind off of their problems. And so we have to be very vigilant when it comes to the people that our kids interact with. And what is really scary about influence is that one wrong decision can affect the rest of our lives. One decision to rob a bank, one decision to steal something from the cash register, one decision to drive the getaway car, one decision to take marijuana, which is a gateway drug that leads to more powerful drugs, such as ecstasy and cocaine. It's just that one simple decision that we make that can turn our lives upside down. So there are so many people that influence us in our lives, and we have to be strong enough to follow and live up to the personal convictions personal beliefs that we have? What are our values and our morals? Are we willing to allow someone to change our morals and our values because they want us to make one decision that is against what we fundamentally believe in and have grown up to believe? And the truth is that peer pressure is what makes that happen, where our children are influenced by other children because we are not with them. And even though they know that they should not be engaging in certain behavior, the peer pressure comes on and they give in to the peer pressure. And it can be difficult. And I'll be honest with you. Remember, I'm always being transparent. There is influence that can occur in your life, but you have to have made a decision that no matter what, I'm not going to be influenced by it. And so for me, drinking and using drugs was one of the things that I grew up with and was told not to do. And I am very proud to say that I do not drink, and I have never smoked, and I've never had an alcoholic beverage. Have I been influenced to drink or to use drugs? Absolutely. But my decision and my answer and my choice was to say no. I remember in college, I was influenced to just try a drink. And some folks were even determined to get me drunk. And I told them that would never happen. And what they said is never say never. But it never happened because it is not a possibility, because the answer is no. And so have to be aware. Maybe somebody would try to slip something in your drink. And that's why you have to be aware. And you have to ask yourself, why would somebody be so determined to get you drunk? That just doesn't make sense. Some people that's just who they are. But they were never successful, and I knew that they would be never successful because it was a decision that I made, and no one was going to influence my decision. So the question is, how are you when it comes to allowing other people to influence what you should do? Do you have parents or kids or coworkers or supervisors, or maybe it's your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your husband and your wife, that influence you to do something that you don't want to do? And when you do it, you feel bad. You feel defeated. Well, you have got to change that. You have got to be able to stand up for yourself and say, I have already said no, and stop asking me. Again, I have already said no, so please stop asking me. Because when you feel like you have no decision-making ability in your life, it is going to cause you to be depressed. So I want you to evaluate in your life, is there people who influence you in a negative way and you feel as if you're not strong enough to stand up to them? I have said many times, we need to purge some relationships that we have because they are not good for us. And until we decide to separate ourselves from people who have a negative influence in our lives, we are not going to be able to grow. We are not going to be able to fulfill our true purpose and potential. So if you are someone out there who really needs to make a change and to decide today that you're going to stop allowing people to influence you, I encourage you to do just that, and you will see your life turn around, and you will be able to experience more happiness, less symptoms of depression, less anxiety and stress in your life, and you will be headed toward a path of happiness, and you will be taking your life back. I know there are people who need to take their life back. It is not too late, and you can still go about making that change. If you are listening to this podcast and you are contemplating suicide, I encourage you to call the suicide hotline. You can also dial 911 or 211. Please do not take your life, because your life is worth living. And there is nothing that you could have done or said that should want you to no longer be here. People make mistakes all the time, every single day. And there's nothing in your life that you can't turn around. Even if it's something that you did and you need to turn yourself into the police, or you need to make a confession, do that rather than take your life. I encourage you to listen to some of the other episodes that we have here. And remember, giving up is never an option. We must stay in the game of life. You are not alone. You are worthy. You are valuable, and your life has purpose. I never want to end my podcast without thanking you so very much for listening. We continue to grow, and I thank you so much for being the best part of Win Over Depression. If you would like to become a patron, I encourage you to go to www.patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Tamara Trotter. That's Tamera, last name Trotter. I encourage you to support us with an offering of $5 to $15 per month, which will help us to spread this message even further. Remember, you can find us on Pinterest at TT Mental Health Expert. You can find us at LinkedIn, Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram at Tamara Trotter. Thank you so much. This concludes our 93rd episode. We will see you next time. Keep the faith, my friends.